Okay, we're going live. So, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of 11 Hours Apart, a ChiLynn podcast. And here with you guys, she's Leah, and I'm Chi. And this week, we're going to talk about this amazing movie, in my opinion. It's called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Leah, do you want to tell us how you feel about the movie?
Yeah, broad overview, I guess. Hi, everyone. Good to be back. It's been a little while since Chi and I last did one of these, but yes, when I first heard about this movie or saw like a trailer or something, I was like, I don't think that's really for me. Like, I probably never would have gone and watched this if Chi hadn't specifically told me to watch it. But I had been hearing people saying good things about it. But even then I was like, I still don't think that's really like my type of movie. Something about the trailer like didn't just was like, I don't know if I'm really interested in that. But when I did start watching it, I was very pleasantly surprised. I found it to be very entertaining, very engaging and intriguing. I will say there were some parts in the beginning, like the first quarter of the film, that I found to be confusing. Like I didn't totally understand the like magic or like the multiverse, or however like it was being described. I was like kind of confused, and that caused a little bit of frustration on my part, but it's one of those movies that if you just go with it, it's fine. Like even if you don't understand like every little detail about how it works, it's like it's okay. You're still going to have a good time watching it. Um I do remember like probably one of the things that pulled me in the most was the main character's like personal story and how they introduce you to her. Like I was really taken away by the fact that they pull you into her experience, and I felt for her like almost immediately, like within the first 5 minutes of being introduced to her. Like I just was so taken by her story, even though there was nothing like remarkable about her in the beginning. It was just you really feel for her character, and I even get a little emotional thinking about it now because it's like very real, like how they portrayed her as this like working mother who was very, she just has so much going on in her life, and she's really busy, but at the same time feeling like she's feeling like she hasn't really like lived up to her potential or her purpose in the world. Like all of that was like very intriguing, and I could, you can relate to that and feel for that character. And so that is what drew me in, was the characters, and not just her but also her husband. Like I felt for her husband a lot, and her daughter, and even the grandfather, or the her father who was coming to visit. Like it was just very well done how they developed those characters, and then the like wonderful like magical multiverse thing with like superpowers was just like on top of it. It was like built on top of these like very strong characters that they created, and that's what I appreciated a lot. I think I had mentioned to Chi before, when we weren't recording, that there were some aspects of the humor that I wasn't as big or didn't weren't as funny to me, but then there were other aspects of the humor in the movie that I like loved. So all that was really good. And yeah, it was just really interesting. I'd never seen a movie like it, It was kind of very unique and creative in that way. And the first movie I've seen in a while that's like that, because most movies that are out these days are like, franchises, or like especially superhero-esque movies. They're all like franchises that are building on like the same archetypes from that we've been seeing for decades now. And um this one was something new and fresh, and that was really cool. So I really appreciated that. Definitely, I wouldn't say it was like one of my favorite movies of all time or anything. Chi, you might disagree with that slightly, but
No,
I
I actually
enjoyed it.
agree. Yeah,
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
this movie a lot. I also, it's not gonna be my top, 5 or even 10, but I would
Yeah.
say this is one of the most unique movies I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I think that's their trademark. That the Daniels, the people, the two people who made this movie, their last movie was called Swiss Army Man, and their
Yes.
trademark was just this really quirky, like,
Yeah.
like unique, very humorous, kind of movie. And you can't. There's no mistaking them. Like, once you see their movie, you know that they made it. There's no other possibilities. So in a way, I really appreciate that.
Hmm.
And I like this movie a lot also because of the characters. Like, the Swiss Army Man is really just a quirky sort of comedy.
Hmm.
There wasn't, I mean, there was some like sort of human element to it about, like, solitude and stuff like that. But I think this movie really, like, all the quirky stuff, the word, all the, like, the sci-fi element, or like the setup, it's really just a really great, like, wrapping paper around this human, very human story about, like Leah was saying, about a woman who basically single-handedly, like, support the whole family. She has to be in charge of everything.
Hmm.
And everybody in the family was just overwhelmed. They have a lot to deal with on their own end.
Hmm.
And uh I mean, at the core, I think this movie celebrates what, like, what women like that had to sacrifice for their family. Like, I think, there, the premise was that, they do this, well, there's like a, impending doom. There's this evil character we didn't know who they were really at the beginning, but we
Yeah.
know that, they were out to destroy the world. And the only way to fight this character, to fight this villain, was to sort of to realize, this protagonist, this mother, or, like, this career woman's full potential. And to
Yeah.
do that, she had to do a bunch of crazy things to, like, access all the possible her in all different parallel universes. And I mean, you can look at that and you can think, oh wow, that is just such a cool concept. At least, the way I see it is that all these things represents things that could have been. If she didn't have to sacrifice this part
Right.
of her life, that is, what she could have become. Like, that is all these, like, unrealized potentials. And
Hmm.
it in the story is like, oh, she had access that to fight this evil character. but
Hmm.
but but in real life, that's all, not just like the mothers, but all women. It's that, everything, every single thing anybody had to, like, sacrifice for something else, that are, like, I think the story honors that sort of sacrifice.
Well, and I think it's not just women, it's really everybody. Like, we all
Everybody.
have these like potential lives in front of us, and our decisions determine kind of what direction we head in. And that means that every time we make a decision, we're kind of deciding against a different possibility. And those decisions end up making us who we are and like what our lives look like to some degree. I guess if you believe in free will, not to get too philosophical or anything,
Oh no,
but
yeah.
it's like, but it's, it's like we make those decisions, but with those decisions come sacrifices. But it's true for like a lot of people that like, especially to have a family and to live with a family, you are making sacrifices of what you would have been or could have done without the responsibility and um I guess duty of having that family life. But we also like value family life and we need family life to some extent. We need those relationships. And so it's like, yeah, on the outside, it might seem like that's not a very glamorous way to live. but as the movie kind of shows by the end is like she actually was that was a valuable, like a very valuable thing to her, and maybe the best possible path that she took out of all the possibilities, because she got the gift of having that relationship with her daughter and with her husband and everything else. And even though maybe she didn't have a lot of material wealth, she had a lot of wealth. And I'm getting emotional now talking about it, because it's like just a very touching story at the end of the day. And I had talked to Yuchi about this a while ago, about how we don't see very many like mother-daughter relationships in movies. There's not too many movies out there. There's a lot of like, you know, there's some very like classic and archetypal stories of like the son redeeming the father, and like the father-son relationship, or even like Star Wars, like the evil father archetype, like that's a thing. Like Lion King, like you have Simba and he has to live up to the king that his father was and the legacy that his father left behind. But you don't always see that with like the mother-daughter relationship. And you even see a lot of stories with mother-son. You do sometimes see that mother-son thing, like Harry Potter is a good example of that. Like Harry has this, thing, this very loving bond with his mother, through the sacrifice she made for him. But again, we don't always get to see that between a mother or daughter. And this is definitely a story that is centered around that mother-daughter relationship, which I think is really cool too. Not saying that I obviously, like, I named like three movies that are like my all-time favorites. So I have nothing against the father-son or mother-son relationships, but it's just like, I being a daughter and having a mother, like that has been a very powerful and meaningful relationship in my life. So it's very interesting for me to see that play out on screen, like how this mother and her daughter relate to each other, how they don't relate to each other, how they fight and how they reconcile, and all of that is like really cool to see, because I think that these are some of our most powerful relationships that we experience in life, are those with our parents. And so for daughters to get to see that kind of play out on this epic scale on the movie screen is kind of cool and very interesting story. And like you mentioned, the two writers, directors of this are both men, correct? Like Dan
They're
Kwan
both
and
men.
Daniel Scheinert. But I think they did a great job of telling this mother-daughter story. Like they wrote very good female characters in this, from my personal opinion, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I
not
very much agree. Yeah.
yeah. And I think they can, that just goes to show like we can under like you can, through art, like kind of experience to some degree like the lived experience of someone who might be very different from you, like on the outside, but there's some of the same internal emotional processes go on the inside, so we can all like kind of empathize with people through storytelling, which is really cool. um, but I
Mm-hmm.
think, maybe that brings me to another really cool thing about this movie is like it wasn't super serious all the time. There was a lot of humor in it. It was very bright and colorful and visually, in addition to through the dialogue. I thought like um I was telling Yuchi like the other week, and it was a little while ago that I last watched this movie, so I'm not going
Mm-hmm.
to be able to
Even longer
remember
ago
like
for me. Yeah,
I know. And you had seen it twice in theaters, right?
I
Chi?
did. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think it's like supposed to come to streaming if it hasn't already. It might be streaming somewhere these days. I'm not
You can
totally
probably rent
sure.
it already. I'm not sure if you can just watch it for free on any of the platforms, but you should be able to rent it somewhere.
Yeah, I
I would
think
think, I would assume. Yeah.
you could definitely rent it on Amazon Prime.
Oh yeah. Okay.
For sure. But I don't know, it might eventually be like available for free on a well, for free with the subscription to a streaming service.
Mm,
Um,
let's hope so.
but I was telling Chi, like some of the I wasn't as big of a fan of some of the sexual humor that was in this just because I'm not that big of a fan of super ultra sexual humor in the first place. Like I just in general, because to me it's just not that funny, but I don't know. Maybe I'm too serious about it. I don't know. I just view it's almost like in the category of like fart jokes or poop jokes to me, which to me, I'm not like as big of a fan of that type of humor as I am of like witty, other types of humor. So like some of the sexual humor that was in this, I was like, okay, I get what they're going for there, but like this is not like I'm not laughing out loud at this. But then there were other parts that I specifically remember, I think particularly between the dynamic between the family members, the husband, the wife, the father and the daughter, like some of their back and forths did cause me to laugh out loud. So I did appreciate that a lot, like their whole dynamic and that dialogue I thought was really well written. But what did you think about the humor, Chi? Maybe you can remember better than me the examples that I gave.
Yeah, well, I do remember like the sexual jokes that you were referring to. I mean, they're not for me. They're not really about. I mean, the point is not about sex per se. Like for example, like there was one
No,
sort of
exactly.
scene where there were two. Well, because the whole idea is that to be able to access yourself from another universe, you have to do something wacky, like something completely out of the
Oh
blue that
yeah.
you normally just would not do whatsoever. So to do that in one of the scenes, like there's two characters that were just hunting down the protagonist, and their only way of accessing a new power is to like put like dildos into their butt, right? But I think that the joke is not so much about the dildo and the butt. It's just that they have to do something so wacky, and to do that they have to do all kinds of like jumping down from a desk, and like they just have to do anything. Like you just see
Mhm.
watch them like maneuver and do this like crazy like wacky stunt just to make that happen. For me, like
Yeah.
I didn't like laugh out loud, but I chuckled because of that. Like not because the idea that two men have to put like dildos into their butt. Like not that to me again, it's not that funny. But just because uh, because the story requirement of the story, they have to make it happen, and the the things they have to do to make that happen was really funny to me. Like
Mhm.
they have to like do all those weird things. Um, so
Well, I
yeah,
like
so
remember the very first thing that we see the husband, but his alternate universe version of the husband do
mhm.
is the paper cuts between the finger. Like even now thinking about that, it's like there was just so many
I know.
uncut. They were like designed to make you uncomfortable, and I would also put the fingers as hot dogs into that category. Like ew, like gross. It was so gross. But then you like it's like I didn't like looking at that like any time when she was in that universe with the hot dogs as fingers. Like it was just disgusting. But then you like there is that little story that happens in that universe where the tax lady is actually like her I guess lover, or I don't know.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
like
yeah. No,
living,
no, yeah,
yeah,
yes,
okay.
they are.
They're in
Yeah.
a relationship
Mhm.
together. And you kind of feel for the tax lady in that universe. Like she's a good person in that universe. And so you do start to feel for the characters, even though they have these gross, like, hands with hot
Yeah,
dogs
hot
with
dog
fingers.
fingers.
Ugh. But yeah, there were so many weird you're right, like wacky. And like you knew this about Michi. Like I don't always go for that type of those types of movies that are just like wacky for the sake of being wacky. But
Mhm.
this one I think did it with enough of character development that I was behind the characters, and so the wackiness of some of the universes or of some of the things that they did like didn't like overwhelm my like attachment to the characters, if that makes sense. So I was like
Yeah, it
still
does.
yeah, I didn't mind it as much as I usually
Mm-hmm.
do. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
it made me still like bond with the characters, so it was
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Yeah.
But
I
and then I
also,
think
yeah.
it was that, and this movie was more than just playing on like this weird like weirdness, wackiness, quirkiness. It was more than just that. It was also kind of like almost like a superhero movie, or like it was also a um like there was other humor in it in addition to the wacky stuff. That's I think also what like brought me around to it. And I was like worried for a while. I thought like, oh, this movie is going to have a really nihilistic ending where cuz like the daughter was kind of like verging on that like nihilism, right? Like she was I kind of remember like when they were rocks and they were having the conversation, like some of the things that they were talking about in that conversation. Like at one point, it concludes, and I was like, oh, like the conclusion of that conversation was kind of nihilistic. And I was like, the daughter's almost like bringing the mother over to that like kind of depressing way of looking at things. But then there was like another scene later with the rocks, and then it ended differently than what I thought. And it makes me emotional thinking about it. I'm so sorry. I just like um I don't know, it ended up like the mother was able to like bring the daughter back to the light, you know, in a sense, but also the mother learned something from the daughter at the same time. And she changed as well. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that cuz it makes me emotional. But this movie I if I hadn't if it's not already clear, this movie like made me laugh in parts and it also made me cry. So you'll laugh, you'll cry, you're along for the ride, but there were parts that made me emotional when I was watching it, and now even talking about it. So that's a good thing for me because I don't mind having a good cry every now and then.
Mm, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that was the emotional core of this movie is just that, like how, because you were right, like the daughter was really going down this animalistic sort of slope, right? And
Yeah.
it was the family bond that brought her back, that sort of convinced
Yeah.
her that things have meanings. It's not every, not that everything,
Yeah.
nothing makes sense, nothing matters, and but I do think that that was probably a lot of the sort of inner struggles that people in her daughter's generation is facing, like, because they just thought, well,
Mhm. Totally.
it doesn't matter what I do, life just sucks. And I think this movie is trying to, one of the messages I think the movie is trying to convey is that, you know if nothing else, the family bond is one of the things that anchor everybody to the world. And I think that that was done beautifully. Like you
Yeah.
said,
Definitely.
I'm not a fan of, like, quirky humor or quirky storytelling just for the sake of being quirky. I think that is just, I often find that kind of stuff like empty. It doesn't leave much of an aftertaste. But this movie, I think what's great about it is that, yeah, it has all that. It has all the quirky elements or quirky humors and quirky um plots. But at the very center is this family, really heartwarming family drama that also celebrates this, like, yeah, like you said, the mother daughter dynamic and the sacrifice that women often have to make willingly. Really, she didn't regret anything. It's not that
Yeah.
she was looking back and said, "Oh, well, I wish I could have, if only I had done that." No, like, she like sacrificed herself and all her potential willingly for the family. And I think in a side that was not often like acknowledged very much. um so yeah,
Yeah.
so I think this movie sort of celebrates that, and in a very unique way. So
Yeah.
that's what I love about this movie.
Very
um
well said.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also I want to, like, sort of like pivot a little bit. So um on top of all that, it also celebrates the the actress that plays the protagonist,
Mhm.
Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah,
So
great.
she was great, but here's the amazing part. So she started out in Hong Kong cinema as like a martial sort of artist actress. So
Oh,
for a
okay.
long time, her now she was always offered like the the martial artist, the woman that can fight.
Yeah,
But it wasn't until like recent years until people started to appreciate her capacity as a as a drama
actress.
actress.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
I think since Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, from that point on, she got to play more of like sort of meaty roles that didn't require her to like fight. That
Mhm.
really showcased her ability as an actress.
Mhm.
And the Daniels wrote this movie for her. Like they had her in mind when they construct the whole script. And she got emotional in one of the interviews for this movie because just like her character in the movie, finally she was able to showcase to the world what she was capable of.
Yeah.
So just when the character was realizing her potential through this like verse jumping, you know, she the character in the movie, she was she could have been an actress, movie actress. She could have been a martial artist, and in parallel to that, you know, Michelle Yeoh could do all these things as an actress,
Mhm.
and this movie allows her to do that, and actually is like is contingent upon that, because that it takes an actress like Michelle Yeoh that can sort of have this full spectrum of abilities to play this character. So I think that's
Yeah.
really cool too.
Yeah.
Because with another different actress, she might not have been able to play all these different versions of Evelyn. Um,
Totally.
yeah.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was, from a storytelling perspective, like like you said, we've been talking about the emotional core of this is the family drama, is the mother daughter dynamic, but it's what's kind of meta about this is that the actress who plays
Yeah.
this also
Yeah.
gets to realize her full potential,
Yeah.
and that is just so cool. So that just adds another layer of like appreciation and the awesomeness of this movie as a whole. So
Mhm.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
this movie will make it into my top five or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Like just the more,
The more
so
you
so
think
I
about it, yeah.
yeah, so like so I wrote, I wrote this as one of my like the blog entries, like the one of the articles that I had to write.
Yeah.
uh and yeah, like
You're
it's
in
just
Taiwan, folks. Look up Chi's newspaper
if you
articles
can
that he
read
writes.
like Mandarin Chinese, check it out. But yeah, it's just that all these things together. Yeah, man, it's what a movie. That's
Yeah.
all I have to say. What a
It's
movie.
very epic and it is an
Mm-hmm.
epic movie, an epic tale. Um but yeah, I think she that is awesome. Like I'm glad you brought up all that up about the actress cuz she did such a great job. But I do want to say like it also I thought that the husband was all what's that actor's name? Do you know Chi off the top of your head? The
I know how
the
to
guy
say
who
in Mandarin.
Oh, how do you say it? Do it.
关继威.
Quan Chi Wei. Is that
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yep. And that's how that's the he goes by that name, just like in English spelling. He doesn't have like
Okay.
English like English name per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Well, I fully support that. So, um, he was awesome too. Like I honestly like
He's amazing.
I noticed him pretty early on in the movie as well because he was having to do the same thing of play all the different versions of and he some of his like shifts between universes were even more dramatic almost at times, but they both did great. And you feel for the husband too. And I do just want to point out like it's not just women that make sacrifices to be in, like, to have a family. Like, men do the same when they choose to be a father and, stand by their family. And that was showcased in this movie as well. Like, he also was, like, he, in some of the other universes, like, he was this, like, very prestigious, like, very handsome, strong, like, rich, powerful man, but instead he had chosen to do the laundromat and taxes with his wife. So it was, that was really touching part of the story as well, like seeing their relationship, because it's the mother-daughter story, but it's also the husband-wife story is in there too, which is really cool, I thought. And I still am getting emotional talking about it, because it is like one of those movies that the more you think about it, the more deep you realize it actually is, in a sense. Like, but I might have to watch it again, check it out, like if it comes on streaming. um, I
Yeah,
might have to
I would
give this a
recommend that.
second watch.
I would recommend that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I got more out of it the second time around. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think the even though like the spotlight is on Evelyn, it's not on Wayman. But yeah, Wayman is again, like he also made sacrifices, and he was like the ultimate, like, a thoughtful sort of, not like alpha male, but like a very thoughtful
Yeah.
guy. Like uh uh
Yeah.
like the scene where he was gonna hand Evan like the divorce paper, because
Yeah.
he thought she could have done way better. Like he thought like
Yeah.
he was the
I
he was
know.
what
So
like weighs her
sad.
down, like set her back. Yeah,
Yeah.
it just, well,
Yeah.
it's not true. And but like it
No.
was it was a very, I mean, not everybody would appreciate that kind of behavior, because I think that could be easily perceived as like weak,
Yeah.
but I like I don't think so. I think it's just a different way of
Mhm.
showing, like, it's a different expression of love and care for someone else.
Yeah.
uh even though it's obvious that he probably was like disappointed in himself, and probably thought like he should have like provided more for the family or something like that. It was obvious that that was like the sort of um the undertone, I suppose.
Mhm.
But yeah, but
Yeah.
the actor
Or
also
that
did a
he
great
wasn't
job.
always like he wasn't always like strong enough to stand up to her or something like that. Like, she was kind of, in some sense, like, at the beginning, she is running everything, but she's not always like, her husband and is like trying to help, but she kind of like dismisses him a little bit, and
Hmm.
she's almost like dominating over him to some extent, and she has to learn how to like remind herself of like how she fell in love with him in the first place, and the strength that he does have, as
Hmm.
her husband and as a man, and like she sees him in a new light after she runs into him in some of the other universes as well, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
she understands it, and he like, yeah, I don't know, it's just like really well done how they like crafted all of these
yeah,
relationships, and then
exactly.
how the
And
actors like played all these different versions of
yeah,
their characters. It's really cool.
exactly. And I want to add that, because the women in the main universe, right? Like, throughout the whole the for much of the story, we saw him, we might see him as a, like, a more like submissive, sort of weaker character.
Yeah.
But I think the movie did something great, which was, through that character we realized that kindness and empathy is actually a very, very undervalued, um they're like undervalued virtues. Because the tax
Hmm.
lady, right, the crisis with the tax lady twice, it was
Yeah.
all because of like the husband showed her like her empathy, really. So
Yeah.
I think that was also depicting
Yeah.
a man who otherwise might be conceived as, like I said, weak, right? because
Mhm.
like he's not bossy. Like he just listened to the wife for the most part, and and seems to not have a very strong sort of character. But
Yeah.
there is strength in that. Like, he's not weak. He is just, that's a different approach and different sort of personality type, I suppose.
Mhm.
And that kind of people, they are powerful in their own way. It's just that maybe it's
Mhm.
not sort of like the dominant, uh it's not like the sort of, it's not like valued by the majority of society, I suppose, when it comes to how men should behave and what men should be like. um
Hmm.
but there is power in that. There's like a sort of a more sort of hidden, or more like inward sort of power in that, in that
Mhm.
kind of, in that kind of people, which
Mhm.
again, that is not the focus of the story at all, right?
No.
But that's also,
In there.
I like the fact that they sprinkle that in there, so
Yeah.
that the husband, is not reduced to some sort of, somebody that just sort of listened to the wife and was submissive all the time, and basically, like, a bona fide, like a weak person. It's
Yeah.
not that. Like, I like the fact that they, in using like some subtle ways, they sort of um they cast light on that, on that side of the character,
Mhm.
which I appreciate.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I do remember one of the specific scenes that made me laugh out loud, to slightly switch gears again, but I I really loved when the family's sitting, I can't even remember what room they're in, but they're in a room and they're sitting there and they start talking about, the wife is, Evelyn is trying to describe to her husband and daughter what is going on with like the multiverse thing, and she's trying to talk to tell them, and it's the ratatouille thing that comes up, and then they're like, oh, like ratatouille, but then the I can't remember, it was like the
They
husband or
all said
the
it wrong.
father, they can't say it right, and like
Yeah.
that like killed me. And then when she goes to the universe where there is the raccoony or whatever it is. It's like ratatouille, but it's a raccoon,
A raccoon, yeah.
because that's how they were literally mispronouncing it that way. And then it turns out in the other universe, like that was the type of humor that I loved in this, like how that stuff would like
Yeah.
come back. It was like a callback to the earlier joke, and it also just made me laugh, like the mispronunciation, because I do not come from an immigrant family at all. But my
Well,
dad does.
not recently.
Not recently. I mean, my mom's side did immigrate from Italy, but that was I'm a generation removed from that. So, um my parents were not immigrants. But my dad's side of the family, they came to America a long, long time ago. But he does come from a small rural town. And so he has like, he also cannot always he does not always pronounce words correctly, and it is kind of a funny thing in my household at times, like the way he says certain words. And it's so funny because ratatouille, because that's really like a French, it's like a play on a, or it is a French word. um my That is 100% the type of word that my dad would not be able to say correctly either. So like I was really like loving that part, because even though they are perhaps like mispronouncing it because of their accents and the fact that English is their second language, which is not the case for my dad by any means, but it's just like funny how people, like, it's hard to, some of these words are like ridiculous to say. Anyways, I just like got a good laugh out of that, and then their whole like banter back and forth about it, and then how it came back later when there was an actual raccoon acting as Ratatouille, like the movie, and just the whole reference to Ratatouille. It was just so funny. And I was like, that was one of the characters I cared a lot about in the other universes too. Like, I really wanted that chef to find his raccoon again. I was really rooting for them. I was so sad when they got separated, and then it seemed
Oh,
like they implied that they found each other again at the end. He was able to get the raccoon back. Um, yeah, but it
yeah,
was
I
really
think so.
cute and sweet and just funny, which
Yeah,
I liked.
I liked that part too. I like the well, again, because like I can like relate to the fact that some of the words, like English, like little, some people can like can barely speak English, let alone French, right? Like, so
I
I
know,
like the
right?
fact that, yeah, exactly. So I like the fact that it was portrayed in a very sort of um uh
Endearing,
genuine way.
genuine.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah, like I've seen, like I myself struggle with some words in the past, and that is exactly what happened. you know and so when I saw that scene, I was like, yeah, I understand, I understand. But yeah, the raccoon was the what's his name, what's the raccoon's name in that universe?
I was looking up
Something.
the quotes to try to remind myself of the funny parts that I like the most, and it's in here somewhere, but now I lost it. It's like Rakakuni or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Um,
No,
oh
I just
yeah,
like the
Rakakuni is what it was.
Rakakuni. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was funny. And also, like, I just love the fact that they had this like really, like they just made a raccoon that you can just totally see that that was a prop. Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
purposely made they didn't know they didn't like try to recreate like a realistic raccoon on top of this chef's
No,
head.
yeah,
I just like that. I thought it
yeah.
was really really funny that they did that.
And that's like a total choice, right? Because they had
Yeah,
other
exactly.
really awesome special effects throughout the show. So it's not that they didn't have the money to do a like really good CGI raccoon. They just
Hmm.
like didn't want it to be that way and that
Yeah,
made it better.
yeah,
And
exactly.
it was just awesome. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
I also loved the well, there is something to be said for I sometimes don't like the CGI animals or like things that if they could do it with a prop or a puppet, like I almost prefer that. Would say the same
Mm.
thing about Star Wars with some of their stuff, but like it's just like the puppet makes it more something about it is almost more relatable somehow. I don't know, but it's
I
weird. It doesn't
agree.
make
I
sense.
feel the same way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at least if with the CGI nowadays, I can't say
Yeah.
for sure what's gonna happen
Yeah.
in 20 years, but
Yeah.
for now, yeah, I much prefer like real props over CGI stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when it comes to creatures, that is.
Yeah.
I feel the
Exactly.
same way. I feel
So
the same way. Yeah.
it gives it a little bit more character or something like that, and it's cool. But I also wanted to say, like, I don't know if we ever even like put this recording out there, but she and I like we did do a recording way back when on the animated show on Netflix called Midnight Gospel. And I don't know, Chi, if this occurred to you, but when they were in the rock world,
Oh.
didn't that kind of remind you of Midnight Gospel a little bit? Like the planets at the end of Midnight Gospel? I don't know. And even more so than just that one world, like some of the other like multiverse stuff that was going on with this, where it was like the same characters but in different worlds, like that was similar in some ways to Midnight Gospel, where you'd have like the same kind of characters popping up, but in
Yeah.
very different circumstances.
I didn't make the connection when I watched this movie, but now that
Yeah.
you said, yeah, it's true. I do know that
Yeah.
this movie was like influenced by Rick and Morty, which also involves
Oh,
like traveling like
what?
multiverses and time travel. Yeah, yeah.
I gotta
Rick and
watch that
Morty.
show. I really want to watch that show. I've had it on my list for a while and I just haven't done it yet. Rick and Morty.
Yeah, I also haven't watched the show, but I heard that I read the stuff that other people wrote about like the criticism on annihilism. That is also a theme in Rick and Morty. Apparently, I think the
Oh,
is it
wow.
Morty? Yeah, like the Doc character in Rick and Morty was he also sort of holds this kind of view.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah. So he apparently he was a bit of a like a nihilistic character himself.
Character. Okay.
Maybe not to the same extent as the villain in this movie, but
Mhm.
maybe he has some sort of like that kind of stripes on him. And
Yeah.
I heard that Rick and Morty also criticize a bit of that as well.
Interesting.
Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's
but I
it's
also
in
haven't watched
some
that show.
ways it's a great philosophic battle of our time. Like this is something people are genuinely reckoning with like in their daily lives, but also like
Yeah.
philosophically like we're trying to understand things with these new viewpoints, I guess, and nihilism has definitely like been a thing that we are trying to reckon with at the moment. So it makes for very interesting stories because I think in some ways these are the internal battles that people are dealing with within their own minds, just real
Yep.
people in day-to-day life. So
Yep.
it's a cool
Yep.
thing to craft a story around, and I always like when when the ending is hopeful at the end and um not
Yeah.
like
Not some sort of everything just
pushing,
goes to exactly.
yeah, pushing like depressing ways of looking at the world because we all battle with that, but like it's, I don't know, I liked this story. I liked how it concluded. I thought the rock scene did remind me of Midnight Gospel. If anyone hasn't watched like the last episode of Midnight Gospel, there's like this really, at least both of them kind of got me in the same place in my heart. Like when I was watching them, it was like this weird, like in Midnight Gospel they're planets like floating through outer space, but in um this movie they're the rocks on the world where there's life never developed or whatever. And yeah, I don't know, it's like something about that, how it like pulls you out of, you're in a totally different, you're kind of like beyond the world, like you're on this totally different planet or whatever, and they're talking about these very deep things but also in very simple terms, and it kind of like just hits you. And I thought that was very
Hmm.
effective in this movie. I thought it was very effective in the Midnight Gospel show. But yeah, I think it is definitely worth a watch. I would recommend this movie, to friends and anyone who hasn't seen it yet. It probably isn't for everybody though. Like I don't think my mom, for example, would be interested in this movie. It's just not at all her style of movie in any way, shape, or form. But if you are
Hmm.
someone who, you know, likes dramas, like superhero movies, likes comedies, like you'd probably have a good experience watching this movie, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I think if you don't mind uh
A little bit of raunchy humor in
a
there.
little bit of raunchy humor and something that's unique, not always
Yeah.
pleasant or easy to process. Like some of
Yeah.
a lot of they're kind of like, yeah, like the sausage hand. Well, I didn't have that strong of a reaction to it, but it wasn't like immediately palatable, I
It's like
guess.
gross kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like because you wouldn't see them coming, right? Like you would that's not something that you would expect to see in a movie like this. Um, but if you don't mind that, if you don't mind being surprised
Or
and
being a little
I
uncomfortable. Being a little
uncomfortable, yeah,
uncomfortable sometimes. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I would say this movie is the worth a watch. Just for the this unique viewing experience alone, I think it's worth it. And again, like we'll be talking about this movie for a while now. It's just like the more you think about it, the more you realize how well crafted and how well thought out and how well all these different things are put together, and how all these
Mhm.
things just serve a purpose of telling a very human story. For me, I think
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
really important thing. Like it's
Yeah.
not just some sort of gimmick. It's all to serve a purpose of telling a story that a lot of us can relate to, and it has a good message,
Yeah.
a good and positive message. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Yeah, I like this movie a lot.
Yeah. It
Hmm.
makes me want to go watch Swiss Army Man, even though I also was like, had no interest in watching that when it first came out.
Yeah, that
Um,
one that one is just more just on the quirky side.
okay.
That one doesn't really have that much of a sort of emotional
Deeper
core.
message. Okay.
Yeah, but it's a good like dark comedy. I would say
Yeah.
it's a worth watch. If you can really get into it, the
Hmm.
first after the first 30 minutes is just stop.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Well, yeah. Thanks very much, Chi, for choosing this movie as one for us to watch. Because otherwise, I honestly probably wouldn't have seen it. So
I'm glad you liked it.
I
Yeah, I'm glad you
am
liked it.
glad you recommended it. Um,
Yay.
happiness. Um,
Yeah.
I'm just steering us away from like more uh deep conversation about it because I was already getting emotional, so I didn't want to get more emotional. Um, um, but I think that pretty much covers it, right? Was there anything else you wanted to say about it?
No, that's all I have to
Okay.
say about this movie.
All right. Well, good. Great conversation. I do want to share I thought I would just throw this out here like completely spoiler free, but I did want to I guess let our listeners know that I have been watching the new Lord of the Rings show and the new Game of Thrones show. So the Lord of the Rings is called like Rings of Power, and then the Game of Thrones one is called House of the Dragon. Y'all probably already knew that. Chi, have you managed to watch any of either of those at
No,
all?
so I
No.
I I will be I can watch. I'm able to watch the House of Dragons show. That
Okay.
one I like already. It's like a part of my subscriptions. I can watch that, but I just haven't done it
Okay.
yet. The Rings of Power, though, I don't think I'll watch that anytime soon because I don't have Amazon Prime subscription.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably for the best. No, I'm just kidding. The game okay, I just wanted to say spoiler free yet again. I really wasn't expecting at all to I really wasn't I was only like halfway interested in the Game of Thrones show. Like I just didn't think it was gonna capture my interest, but so far, really good. I think there actually was an episode that came out yesterday that I haven't watched yet, but the episodes that I can't remember what episode we're on, but like the 3 or 4 episodes that I've already seen have been so good. Like I'm very I it's very good. So Chi,
Mm,
definitely whenever you get
check them
around
out.
to it,
Yeah. Okay.
start
I
checking it
will.
out. Um Yeah, it's very good, and there's some very interesting if you do start to watch it, maybe we can talk about it more, but there's actually 2 central characters that are, like, young women who are coming of age, and they're friends, and they play major
Oh.
roles in the show, and there's some interesting things about their, like, friendship that and, like, just the what happens that I think is like would be interesting to talk about, or I would be interested in like sharing some of my thoughts about it because I was finding myself like just being very engaged with their story, but also like I don't know, there's some amazing acting in it. It's like surprisingly good. Like I really didn't think I was going to be that into it, but it's very good. It does like give you similar vibes to like the early seasons of Game of Thrones, so you feel like you're back in that world but like in a good way. So even if you weren't a fan of the ending of Game of Thrones, as many people weren't, this show I think kind of returns you back to the vibe that you are getting like in the early seasons of Game of Thrones when it was like really popular and everybody was loving it. However, we're not that many episodes into the season, so who knows how it will go from here on out. So I think it was good to go into it with like low expectations because my expectations were exceeded. Um, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power show, on the other hand, I was very concerned about this show going into it. So I didn't, I was like, I want it to be really good, but it probably isn't going to be. So I kind of had like that type of outlook. And in some ways that helped because it was also like a form of low expectations. And so I've been surprisingly like intrigued by the show. But having said that, I feel like the way that I'm viewing it is almost like not as it's weird because there's definitely characters that distinctly tie it to Lord of the Rings, but like I almost am viewing it as just like some random fantasy show and not as like a Lord of the Rings story. And in that sense, it's like intriguing, but and I've found that each week that I've watched an episode, I'm kind of like wishing for the next episode because I do want to see where they're going with it. Like I kind of wish they just released it all at once so I could just like binge through it. I do feel that way after I finish an episode. So in that sense, like I probably will keep watching it throughout this season. But there's some, in my opinion, very bad writing and very bad dialogue and some things in it that just don't make sense. And it feels very, in some ways, it feels a little generic, which is very unfortunate. Like all this stuff is like very bad when you think that it's Lord of the Rings, which is supposed to be like, in my opinion, the greatest fantasy story of all time. So, or it's a, you know, a Middle Earth story, I guess. And it's just something about it feels like very it's hard to put my finger on it exactly because I think it's a bunch of things, but this is supposed to take place thousands of years before the Lord of the Rings. And remember when you're like watching Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy, how when you're watching those movies, at least this is how I felt, you almost get this feeling of like how ancient that world is. You know, you get this feeling of like how ancient it is, and it feels just so mysterious and ancient like that. This show is supposed to take place thousands of years before, and it feels very contemporary in some ways. Like even like I was noticing like some of the women, the female characters are wearing like dresses that don't have sleeves, and it just doesn't feel very medieval, or you know, it's supposed to be this like medieval fantasy, but they're wearing these like sleeveless dresses, or like a dress that has sleeves but has like cut out holes where their skin is showing through, and it's like that's okay, that's better than sleeveless. But there's one character in particular that wears this like spaghetti strap dress that just does not look like she is living thousands of years in the past, you know? And that like kills me because I'm like, it just feels a little bit generic, like a generic fantasy, contemporary fantasy story. And it's a little too bright and new feeling. But it is, having said that, it does take place in a time like before, like the civilizations that they're showing us are kind of at their peak, and they're in this like grand opulent time in their history. So for those civilizations to look like clean and new and shiny and bright is like probably appropriate, but then I think it's like it's losing that mysterious like ancient feel to it a little bit. But anyways, it's maybe I wouldn't worry too much, Chi, about like missing it because it's not like anything great so far. But there's some interesting stuff that they're doing, and I've been intrigued enough to keep watching it. So that's my like very short reviews of those two shows that I did want to share because that's what I've been watching recently. Chi, I don't know if there's anything you've been watching recently that you'd like to share about.
I have been watching. Well, it's good because the shows I've been watching, there's no overlap at all. So I finished Sandman on
Oh
Netflix.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
was great. I love it
Okay.
so much.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a great
Right.
show because well, it was gonna be good because the story, the material the show was based on was good. Was like
Neil
verified
Gaiman.
good stuff. Yeah, exactly from the graphic
Mhm.
novel. So, but I didn't read the novels. I just thought, okay,
Me
well,
either.
people said, universally, like just they just praised the story and thought the only problem is that, well, people have tried to adapt the graphic novels into movies, TV series before. It was just too difficult. Um, I have to say I was very happy with the result. I
Okay.
really liked the story. So I would recommend that. And there wasn't that many episodes. I think it was like 9, and they just they just released this bonus episode, like a standalone episode, the 10th episode, not long ago. Um,
Okay.
so I finished that. I I binged the latest Cobra Kai as soon as it came
Oh,
out.
I didn't know
Yeah,
you had been watching that.
I have been watching that show. Like I watched the show when it was on YouTube, when it's even before it moved to Netflix.
Oh.
I paid money, like when it was like I think the
Oh
first two
yeah.
seasons were on YouTube, and it didn't cost that much, so I just like watched the whole thing, and I
Oh.
got hooked. I love the
I
show.
had no idea. I had heard very good things about that show, but
I
I have
the
not watched
show
it.
it was good. It was really good. Um, and
Cool.
I just started watching Better Call Saul.
Oh, that's also I've heard a great show.
Oh
I've never
yeah, yeah.
watched it. I've only ever
I
I watched
I
all of
tried.
Breaking Bad, but
I started before I was so I watched part of the Breaking Bad when it came out, but I just couldn't. I think I just stopped after the second season for some reason. I don't know. I just lost interest, and after hearing so many good things about Better Call Saul, I just thought, well, I better check it out. I think I tried to start before,
mhm,
but again, maybe like I was not on the right mindset. I couldn't get into it, so I just sort of stopped.
mhm.
Um, but I just started watching again, and I'm on. Well, my progress on that front is not that fast. I've only watched
It's okay.
5 episodes now, but I like it. I thought it was really good.
Cool.
I've also been watching another show on Disney Plus called Reservation Dogs. It might not be on
A
Netflix.
show?
It
A
might not be
show?
a show called Reservation
Oh.
Dogs. It's developed by Taika Waititi, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
about this group of
Oh.
native kids like living in a
Yeah.
reservation in
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Okay.
Um,
It's like a play off
yeah,
of Reservoir Dogs, the
exactly.
movie.
Reservation.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That show was also really good. I'm about to finish. Well, there's only been one season, right? So there's only one season so far, and I think I'm about to finish it. I think I have like what 2 episodes left, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
they're
right.
all really good.
Awesome.
That's why it's hard for me to squeeze in new shows because there's just so many.
Too much going on.
Yeah, too
Yeah.
much going on. Yeah.
I know. I honestly haven't been on Disney Plus in like a while, but I think they came out with like a behind the scenes for the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which I
Oh,
do want to watch.
I watched
Did you
that.
watch it?
I
Was it
did.
good?
I thought it was good.
Okay.
I liked it. Yeah.
Sometimes those things like help me even when I maybe wasn't the biggest fan of the final product, like I watch that and it like makes me appreciate it more, you know? I mean, I felt that
Yeah.
way with the Boba Fett when I watched the Boba Fett
Mm,
behind the scenes.
yeah.
So,
I think this
and
one
then
might
I
just do
think
that for you. I think
yeah, probably will.
probably it might just win you
But
back a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I didn't hate the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I was just like a
You
little
sure?
disappointed. No, I didn't
No, no.
hate it.
There are
I'm glad.
some things about the show that yeah, I just invites like criticism because it's just too convenient or doesn't really quite make sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I guess the things that I think they did right
Mhm.
was enough to make me sort of overlook all these other things. I
Yeah.
don't know. I just bought it. Maybe I'm like too easily satisfied or something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I was pretty happy with a lot of the things that they did in the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I think my main criticism from Obi-Wan Kenobi was the writing and it's like it wasn't all bad. There were just some parts where the writing was, I thought, subpar. But I also like now that I've been watching the Lord of the Rings show, I think the Lord of the Rings show is a worse. So it's like that's really bad writing. I mean, I don't know. You would I can't really talk about it unless you were watching it, but like um they're like the plot conveniences and stuff that are in the Rings of Power show is like so much more blatant than whatever was
Really?
in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I think. But
Oh,
I
okay.
also was like very, I don't know. I think I was more I don't know. I was just caring a lot more about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. I think I kind of knew going into the Lord of the Rings show that it wasn't going to be like everything that I would hope that it would be. So I've kind of been viewing it in a different lens of like, well, let's just see if it's entertaining at all. And there are some
Yeah.
aspects about it that I do find entertaining. And there's some cool, I think the visual effects of the Rings of Power show is great. Like they did some cool things with like the scenery and the sets and things like that have been really cool. The costuming I'm not so much a fan of, and the writing I am not so much a fan of for Rings of Power.
Mm.
For Obi-Wan
Mhm.
Kenobi, I thought the acting was great. I
Yeah, the acting
thought
was great.
it was so I think they did some really good things where they were recognizing like the popularity of the prequels in that show. So I fully appreciate that about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, that they were paying homage to the prequels in quite a lot of that show. I'm very happy with some of the flashback sequences that we did get. Um, and it will be interesting to see if they do more. I do kind of hope now. I thought that I wasn't going to want anything else about like season 2 of Obi-Wan Kenobi, but I kind of hope that there is one now.
Mhm.
So, because they left some stuff like untold. So I think, and that's the stuff that I really wanted to see the most. So I kind of think if there is a season 2 of Kenobi, I might like love that season a lot, even though I wasn't as
Mhm.
big of a fan of this season. So I'll have to watch that behind the scenes and maybe we can talk more about it in the future. Um,
Yeah.
but yes, I think the Andor show is coming out soon if it hasn't
Yeah, the
started
indoor
coming out.
show, I look forward to that. And then I also
Oh, the Jedi thing. The
the
animated
Tales of
thing.
the Jedi. Yeah, that is also
Yes.
cool. Yeah, that
That
looks
looks
awesome
so
too.
good.
And there's another show.
So good.
Uh I know, I know. Yes, I'm excited about that too. Very much
That
excited
looks to
about that.
me like better than the Obi-Wan Kenobi show ended
It
up
could
being.
be.
So
It really could be. It really could be. Because Ahsoka is gonna be in it, and then again, it's just like one of those filling the blanks sort of, or connecting the dots sort of shows. But yeah,
yeah.
like just the premise of it, I think I'll be excited to see what's happening.
Yeah.
There's another show called Willow, which apparently
Yeah.
is like some old show that gets a like a sequel or something. I don't know, but I didn't watch I didn't even realize there was an old Willow show. But just like seeing the trailers for Willow, and I love the character Willow. Like
Well, it was a movie that had come out
it
and
was a
It
movie.
was George Lucas did this
Oh, okay.
movie.
I didn't know what
He
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, he wrote it and everything. He's truly a genius. Like people don't realize it because they only think of him as like Star Wars, but he really is
Yeah.
like he's a good. I mean, you could complain about his like directing abilities and his ability to write dialogue, but like he um he has that mind for like good quality fantasy stories. And
Hmm.
um
I think he's
yeah,
really good at
George
world
Lucas made
building.
it. Yeah, and world building. And it was
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very beloved like movie when it came out. And now they're doing a show based off of it. And the Warwick Davis was like the
Mm-hmm.
star, and
Yeah.
I think he's in the show, right? Like he's involved with the show. And
He is in the show. Like he plays Willow
yeah,
in the show. And
yeah.
it's just from the look of the trailer, it's there's gonna be a lot of him. Like he's
Yeah.
like front and center. No, it's just
Yeah.
I don't know. Like we've seen a lot of fantasy stories already, right? Like that kind of world, it's not
Yeah.
nothing new to us. But there's something, at least from the trailers, there's something unique uh, about like the characters and just the vibe. I can describe it,
Yeah.
but it got me really interested. It got me really intrigued. So
Yeah.
I look forward to to that show too.
The original movie film was directed by Ron Howard, though. George Lucas
Whoa,
produced it.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and it was directed by Ron Howard and also
Did
produced
Warwick Davis
by,
also play Willow
yeah,
in the movie? He did. Oh wow,
I'm pretty sure.
that's amazing.
Yeah. And I watched some of the promotional, like way back when they first were announcing this show or something. They did some, I can't remember what I saw. It was something on YouTube, I guess, of the cast, and
Mm-hmm.
Warwick Davis was there with like the young cast, and they were doing this, like it was like a scripted thing, like promotional thing that they were doing, but I thought it was genuinely like really funny. Like they were hilarious, like as a cast together, and it was scripted, but like they were doing some comedic things in it. So I don't know if it would be, I can't recall off the top of my head like what that was for, but I think it was for one of the Disney Disney does these like Investors Day celebration things where they
Oh,
announce
I
all their
see.
new projects, and I think it was one of those, and it was like hilarious. Like they had written it so like the younger cast was poking fun at Warwick for being like old, and he was poking fun at them. Like they were just joking around with each other in like this very entertaining way. So I was like, if the show utilizes that energy at all, I think it will be a great show to watch, because it was like pulling me in, just like watching them interact. Like they seem
Mm-hmm.
like a good cast that was working well together. So um yeah, I appreciated it. So I would be very curious to check that out. So is it
Yeah,
out
me too.
already?
No, 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 no. It's not out.
Okay.
It's not out
It's
yet.
coming. Okay.
I'm not sure when
Yeah.
exactly it's gonna be out, but soon I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the calendar somewhere. Yeah, so like that. There are like a few good things coming out.
Oh
They
yeah.
just start production on Mendo. No, I think they already
Season
wrapped it
3.
probably.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's coming out in 2023. I saw the trailers or whatever for that, and it also
Mm-hmm.
looks very good. Like it makes me so mad, cuz it's like, why they're doing great things with these new characters or like these new shows with at Lucasfilm, but they seem to struggle when it comes to these shows that they did that were with the older characters, in my opinion. Like they're just not as good.
Mm.
Like the Obi-Wan Kenobi show is not as good as
Mm.
Mandalorian
The
season
Mandalorian.
2.
Yeah.
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 And like even Boba Fett, like the best episodes of Boba Fett were the ones where Mando was there, in my
I
opinion.
know.
Like
We
I
talked.
just
Yeah, we talked about this. It's just the highlights of the Boba Fett show was actually the one that, when Boba Fett only
yeah,
showed up for like a few minutes.
yeah. And
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I honestly think it's I don't know. This is pure speculation, but I think it's the shows and episodes where both Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are working together on them. Those are the most successful one. That's the impression that I'm getting. I
Mm.
think that they do great as a team. I think sometimes when it's something that just Dave Filoni is doing and Jon Favreau isn't as involved, Dave Filoni has definitely put out some really high quality stuff, but I think he gets a bit carried away sometimes with certain things that Jon Favreau, his temper, he's able to give. He has a vision that is more for a general audience. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I just think that they balance each other out in like in a good way, and when they can be working together, that's when they're the strongest. And when they're working separately, they both have like weaknesses that come out a little bit more, or when they're removed from
Mm.
the project like too much, then the project doesn't isn't as good. If both of them are like slightly removed from it, like they've given it over to somebody else to take charge on, and they're just like providing some oversight and advice, like I find that those ones aren't quite as good either. So it's like I think we just, but they can't do it all. They have to hand it, they have to
Yeah.
give other people a chance to show their, to get their experience like directing Star Wars stuff. So I'm hopeful like that the future is still very bright. I just um yeah, I think it's good. I am not like totally have a bad taste in my mouth over anything with Star Wars. I just, it's funny how they are able to do such amazing work with some of the Mando stuff, and like this Tales of the Jedi thing looks so sick. Like it just looks so good. And it's like that type of energy is what I wish was more present in the Obi-Wan show, but maybe it, I who knows? I haven't seen that animated show yet, so it might not be as good as I think it's going to be. And I was very hyped for Obi-Wan, so, and they did some really amazing things in Obi-Wan, so I hate to be ratting on it too much, but I was disappointed with some things as well, as
Hmm.
everybody knows. But all right, well, that's enough of that. I can shut up about all that stuff now. But I thought it was good. I wanted to bring that um I wanted to have a little conversation here at the end about other stuff we're watching, because it has been a while, Chi, since we have recorded,
Yep. It
and
has been a
it's
while.
good to catch up about other things we've been watching.
We've been tuning into. Yeah, yeah. There's
Yes.
just a lot of good stuff out there. I think it's actually pretty good that we cover like different territories.
Oh,
It just so happened to work out that way.
yeah.
Um,
I'm open to
but
like continuing doing some spoiler free like kind of reviews of stuff we're watching, or even if both of us haven't seen it.
hmm
You know what I'm
yeah, I
saying?
think that'll be great. Yeah, because I don't think I'll. So obviously, I'm not gonna watch Rings of Power anytime soon, and I doubt that I will have time to watch the House of Dragons either. Like consistently. I mean, so
I
I
think
think
you
yeah,
would get really into it if you
I
start
know, I know,
watching it
I
though,
know
Chi.
exactly, and that is why I
You
want to like
gotta watch
finish.
it.
I know, I will. It's just that I want to sort of, because if I start watching that and I got sucked into it, and then I have to give up, say like Better Call Saul or something, I just don't want to do that.
Well,
I want to like finish.
it's just one season, that's coming out episode by episode right now. So it will end
Oh
after
yeah,
10
that's true.
episodes.
That's
So it's
true.
just 10 hours. Time.
All right, I'll see what I can do, because because I am interested in that show. Like I wasn't, well, so I think just like you, I wasn't like very much into it. So well, okay, well, I'll see what happens. I'll see what people think, and yeah, I've been hearing nothing but good things about the show. Like it, I think a lot of people also like you. They think that it sort of harkens back to the earlier
Hmm. Game
seasons
of
of Game of Thrones.
Thrones.
Like it's just
Yeah.
the world, like the political intrigue and all that.
Yeah.
Um, okay,
The
so
guy that
I'll
plays, there's two male actors that are playing
mm-hmm,
Targaryens. The guy that plays the king,
mm,
Patty, I think his name is Patty
Considine
Constantine.
something.
Yeah.
No,
So
Considine.
Considine.
Mm-hmm.
So good, Chi. I mean, his acting performance is blowing me away. Like, I love him. And he's like one of these characters that is gonna die eventually, but like you just like he's doing great in the role. And I
mm,
didn't, at first I was like kind of taken aback by him because he doesn't really have this like kingly, he's kind of soft, like if that makes sense, like he's soft around the
mm,
edges. And something about him, his appearance, his demeanor, whatever, like he seemed to be kind of soft around the edges, and I didn't think he seemed very kingly, especially not for like a, he didn't seem, I don't know, something about him I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like him. But then, oh my gosh, like performance so good. And then
mm.
the guy that plays his brother, Daemon Targaryen, is Matt Smith, who was
Matt Smith.
apparently one of the Doctor Who's, which I've never watched that show, but like apparently he was a very well liked
Yeah,
Doctor Who.
he was also in The
And
Crown. He plays like Prince Philip in the first two
oh,
seasons. That's
oh,
how I
see
knew him.
that
Yeah,
That's a
I didn't watch any
show.
of Doctor Who. Yeah. Oh, you haven't watched The
Yeah.
Crown?
I've watched so I watched like season 1 a long time ago, maybe when they only had 1 season out. Like I had watched
Mm,
season 1 and then it like more seasons came out, but I didn't start watching it or I didn't continue watching it, and then I felt like I wanted to rewatch season 1 to catch myself back up, so I restarted season 1 at one point, but then dropped it. But now, obviously, since so sad, Queen passed, but she lived a long life and had a very
very
long
long life.
reign.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I'm as probably is true for a lot of people, I'm a little bit reinterested in it now, so I might start to I'm thinking about rewatching it, but like you said, like I'm watching these other 2 shows right now, so it might be a little bit of time before I get around to like rewatching all of The
That show is
Crown.
worth watching. I think that one is like one of
Yeah.
my favorite
It's
shows in
very,
recent years. So
very well
good.
done.
So
Yeah.
good. So good. Yeah,
Yeah.
the writing. I
Beautiful.
think the writing is what's
Yeah.
the most amazing about it is that
Yeah.
because I think it's really hard to write this kind of like historic drama where
Yeah.
you have to fill in a lot of like behind the scenes dialogues and what happens, and to
It
do
feels so
that.
real though, doesn't it? It
I know,
feels
yeah,
like it's really
and
what happened.
exactly, and that is the testament to like how good the writing. Peter Morgan, who wrote the whole thing, like he just
Yeah.
a testament how good he is as a writer, because you
Yeah.
can totally. I mean, it's like dramatized, but it is not. It's like still very believable, and it just makes because a lot of those characters that we saw on screen, they're just sort of like two-dimensional. We only see
Yeah.
them as like this public figureheads even, like.
Yeah.
But what this show does is it adds a lot of flesh and blood to these like historic
Mhm.
characters, and it has done such a fabulous job
Yeah.
in terms of writing. I love the show so much, and
Yeah.
acting also.
It's
Like acting is just all around like superb,
so good.
so
And
good.
it's very one thing I really remember from season 1 is how beautifully shot it is, like, the
Mm,
cinematography is amazing, the lighting and the music. I love the music from that show. I listen to the music from that show, like, when I'm working sometimes, like, behind like, to have as background music because it's so beautiful and it feels
hmm.
very dramatic and, like, meaningful, and it's like I would put that soundtrack up there with some of my favorite soundtracks, because it's just very well crafted, I think, that soundtrack also. So but I've only seen season 1 and it was a really long time ago, so I need to rewatch it. I was reinterested in it when they came out with the season where Diana shows up,
Hmm.
and I wanted to see that because I had heard that the portrayal, like the actress that plays Princess Diana was like very good, like she
She
hit the
was really
mark.
good. Yep.
And so I really wanted to watch that, but I didn't wanna skip over it, like, I hadn't seen all the seasons, so I was like, "Oh, I gotta go back and watch from the beginning," and then I, like, never followed through with it. So, now I
Yeah.
might be more interested because 'cause I'm also more interested in seeing how they portray the queen throughout the show as well. Because I do remember really loving in the first season, like, when she gets the news that she's now gonna be queen, like, that
Hmm.
whole part, like, whew, it's crazy. And I
It's
saw
crazy.
some I know, can you imagine? And she was like
Yeah.
20, she was like in her early 20s and it's like,
Yes.
"Oh, by the way, you're gonna be the queen now." And she had already like she was so like I don't know, you just realize when you're an adult and you're thinking about stuff like that, it's like only certain people are really cut out for that sort of thing, and she was
Oh
one of
yeah.
them, like, she
She
managed to
Yeah. She rose to
embrace
the
that.
position. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I mean like the crown, how the crown works is that like every two seasons it's just sort of like a soft reset.
I
Because
know, that's what
there's
my
a time
mom
jump.
said. I
Yeah, it's
know.
like this like time jump, and also they switch the whole cast. So you
I know.
I would say if you're interested in watching just the Prince Charles Diana dynamic, you don't really have to watch the finish the first two seasons. It's like its own thing, and I would say that part is really really well done too. Like the actor that plays Prince Charles, he is also fantastic.
Ugh,
I
I
would
don't like
say.
Prince Charles, but
No, I don't
King,
either. But like, yeah,
King
he's
now.
king now. He's king now. But he is that's the thing. That's the magic of the crown, is that even, when depicting such a unlikable character,
Yeah,
it's not, you still managed to like to add some like a
yeah,
really solid foundation to it. So
yeah,
yes, like at the end, I'm not like won over by Prince Charles at all, but I
yeah,
understood why she would treat Anna that way.
yeah.
Because like he is also sort of like a victim of of being in a royal family, and not being able
Okay.
to love whoever he loves, which is a
Mm,
tragedy in and of itself. And so, like I said, does that justify what, some of Prince Charles behaviors? No. But I still enjoy watching him as a
yeah,
character. And I think
totally. Yeah,
that is another, a sign of good writing, is that you still like get a lot out of watching somebody that's not likable at all.
right.
um that's,
Yeah,
yeah. So I mean, Peter Morgan, again, like, he is amazing.
yeah. So which season was Matt Smith in?
The
The
first two.
first?
The first two.
Okay.
So
Okay.
they
I thought I thought
two,
he
two
looked
two two seasons
familiar.
at a time. Yeah, two seasons at a time. Like
Okay.
the
Okay.
yeah, one and two is the
Okay.
same group of people, and then
Okay.
they change it up.
Okay. Well, he is so good in House of Dragon too. Like,
Mm,
oh my gosh, I'm
I
so
bet.
excited to see he's one of these characters that's like he's not good, but he's not totally bad. I mean, that's true for most characters in Game of Thrones,
Hmm.
but like he's like just a very different personality from his brother who's the king, and he wants the throne for himself, and he's got some very bad tendencies and personality traits, but you also like love him at the same time. And I don't know, he's just very fascinating to watch. And like the actor that plays him is doing great. And the two main female characters, I actually really like both the actresses that are portraying them too. I thought I wasn't gonna like the girl who's playing the young Targaryen
Mm,
female character. Rhaenyra is her name, and she's kind of like supposed to be like Daenerys. I think she's supposed to be like similar in some ways to Daenerys, but and she has a distinctive look to her, and like to her face and everything, like her facial structure. And I was like, I don't know if I really like I'm gonna like her, but I actually love her. I think she's doing so good. But they're doing this time jump. I'm not sure if it's the next episode or the episode after that. They are going to be switching to older actresses because there's a time jump. And
mm,
so I'm not, that will be interesting to see how that goes, because I think a lot of how I feel about this first season is probably going to hinge on, do they successfully make that time
mm.
jump transition where you still feel like those two female characters are the same character even though they're being portrayed by different actresses. Do we buy it, in other words?
Yeah.
Because yeah, so we'll see. But I think the men are staying the same actors. I guess they're just
Hmm.
making them look older.
Older. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably easier to
yeah,
do. I heard some
yeah.
news that they're adding Henry Cavill and Elizabeth Olsen into
What
season two.
is that real?
I think so. I think
What?
so. I don't know who they're gonna play. I'll be curious to see how they're gonna fit into the whole series. I think so. Yeah, that wasn't. I think that was, yeah, confirmed news. Yeah,
Huh.
interesting, right?
For some reason, I can kind of see Henry Cavill. But maybe that's just because he's very attractive. um, but Elizabeth Olsen, I don't know. I don't want it to turn into. I don't want it to feel. I don't want. I mean, they're so distinctly Henry Cavill, like I think of as Superman, but he was also in The Witcher, which I guess is why I can
Hmm.
like buy him in like the Game of
Yeah.
Thrones fantasy world a little better. But
Hmm.
Elizabeth Olsen, I just think of Marvel, and I don't want it
Hmm.
to feel like Game of Thrones is becoming like there's superheroes in it now, you know? But like
Yeah.
it I
I mean,
think that there's an
she has
effective
to
way to
speak in
do
a
it.
different accent. That's for sure. Like her
Oh,
accent is
yeah.
very sort of,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
she's
know,
too American.
Hollywood.
She's, like, very
Exactly. Well, not
American.
just American, but like Hollywood. Like,
Yes. Yes,
um,
Hollywood. Yeah, exactly.
Hollywood.
Yeah, and
So
I kinda
I'll be
liked
interested
how
to see how, cause, yeah, because
yeah.
these two people, they would just stand out. I mean, if well,
Yes.
they could potentially stand out very much, and not exactly in the good way. So I'm curious to see, like, how they're gonna, how they're gonna utilize these two, because because they're both good actors.
Yeah.
That's like, that's, there's no doubt
Yeah.
about that. But how would they fit into the whole ecosystem of
Yeah.
the show? That's what I'm curious about.
Or I'm a little nervous that that would then open the door for them casting more. It's like maybe it's fine that they do that with those 2, but then if this now opens the door to all these A-list Hollywood actors wanting to get in on Game of Thrones, I don't know if I'd be behind that because
Hmm.
I like how Game of Thrones casts like pretty much unknown actors in all their roles. I like that. I think that's very effective for most quality like fantasy stories. Like other than maybe a few select characters, you can have some like very well-known actors. I like the mostly unknown main cast. Like that's one of my favorite things. Like I like that for like the original Star Wars for like they had Alec Guinness in the original Star Wars. He was well respected, but like everybody else was pretty much unknowns. And then like um well, Harry Potter did it successfully with like some really well known, but it was still like all British people. Like I think maybe what it is like the Hollywood aspect. I think you're right, Chi. It's like I want my fantasy that is like in this like British medieval kind of theme to it. Like I want them to feel like British and not like Hollywood flashy. But that's why the Hollywood thing works so well for like Marvel cuz that's like a very American like
Mm-hmm.
Marvel thing. And like Star Wars is very American too. And so that's like kind of fine. But like it's I don't know. I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. They might be able to pull it off just fine. So who knows? I guess I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but that is
Yeah,
very
I'm mainly
interesting.
just curious. I think they
Yeah.
wouldn't. I think the showrunners would know well enough to not. I think they know what they're doing. I tend to believe that they know what they're doing. So if they want to cast Elizabeth Olsen, they must have a vision of how she would fit into the whole thing. Because
Yeah.
I
Or
think
she'll
they.
like
I mean,
die in 2 episodes. She'll be in 2 episodes and then she'll die.
yeah, no, but it
They'll
seems like,
kill
but that
her.
would be a cameo though. Like, it doesn't. So far, it doesn't seem like they would be like cameos. They're like, they have like a role to play or something. So yeah, I'll be curious to see how, when Elizabeth Olsen shows up on screen. Yeah, I'll be curious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe I'll tune in, because who knows? And Henry Cavill too. Like, you
Do
know,
it.
but yeah, he's not as far removed as far as his image goes from the Game of Thrones ecosystem. But still,
Well,
like, he would just stand
yeah.
out right
I
away.
th- I think him being British helps. I think like cuz
Sure.
his British accent will be like a lot obviously way more natural and organic. Like he won't have to put it on. Like he'll just talk
Yeah.
his normal voice. And he will also I think he knowing what I know about him as a like his personality, like he is a nerd. Like he loves all this stuff. So I could just
Yeah.
see him like really buying into it and not just
Hmm.
doing it for the money or for the prestige or like the image of him being in the show. Like he genuinely loves these stories like cuz he is that nerd. Elizabeth Olsen on the other hand, it's like what are her real motivations behind it? Like this I'm sure she likes Game of Thrones, but like is she mostly wanting to be involved just because she wants to say like, "Oh, I did Game of Thrones," you know? But I don't know. I don't know her. I haven't watched as many like interviews and stuff with her, so maybe she's also a nerd. I don't know. But also,
Yeah.
even if she's not a nerd,
I
doesn't
don't
mean
think she's
she's
a
not going to
nerd,
do great.
but she started out like, before she was like known, in the Marvel universe. She actually started out in like independent, like indie movies, actually. just like Brie
Oh, yeah.
Larson. Like they both started out as like indie films and somehow move into this Marvel universe. She is a good actress, but the problem though is that she has a very distinct sort of well, just the her mostly like the her accent really. I think that is the, but then again, like with some like dialect coaching, that I don't
Yeah.
think that's not something that she can overcome.
Well,
But
actors put on accents all the time, and a lot of them
exactly,
do it
yeah,
effectively.
yeah.
Some do not do it effectively, but like she will, depending on how well she pulls that off and how
Mm-hmm.
good she does her job as an actress, like if she does her job and she does good at acting this role, I'm sure everybody will love her in this show.
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
if she doesn't, then
It's just that, yeah. But the thing is, though, like even if like these two people, they do a good job, just because of the way their image in the pop culture, it is still like easier
yeah.
to pull the audience out of the
Exactly.
scene. Like
Yes.
even though
I
like
agree.
Elizabeth Olsen or Henry Cavill could be doing a perfect acting job, but just the fact
Mhm.
that we recognize them as Henry Cavill and Elizabeth
Mhm.
Olsen can just like somehow like distract us a little bit. So again, we don't know yet what roles they'll be playing, and maybe they would
Mhm.
be like they would not, they would be like unrecognizable to some extent. We don't
Mhm.
know. I'm mainly just curious about how they'll be utilized, and yeah, how they're gonna look on in the show on screen.
Yeah,
Very
me
interesting.
too. I
Mm.
agree. That was well put. All right. Well, on that note, shall we bring this to a close for
Sure.
this
That
week?
sounds that sounds good. Yeah. We cover a lot of grounds, That's pretty good episode. Pretty good conversation.
We had a lot to catch up on, and there's a lot more stuff that we didn't even say that I'm sure like Chi and I both watched in the interim since our last recording. But yeah, hopefully from here on we'll be able to do this a bit more frequently and stay up to date on everything. But until next time, this was fun. Chi, thanks for
Yeah, thank you. It's fun.
everything. Everything everywhere all at once.
Oh, and what? Nice. Very nice. Full
I did
circle.
not
I
I'm
like
kidding.
that. I like that.
Yes. Yes. Many thanks to our listeners. If you're out there, if you made it all the way to the end of this conversation, we appreciate you and invite you to like, share, and subscribe. And please leave a comment if you have any feedback or questions or suggestions for us. We're happy to read through those. But mostly, Chi and I are just having a fun time with these conversations, regardless of if anyone tunes in or not. So, yeah, but we hope that, someone else might find this entertaining and maybe agree or disagree with us on certain opinions or points that we made. And we're happy to engage with you about this entertainment that we're all enjoying. Yeah. Anything else to add, Chi?
No, that was well put.
All righty. Until next time, signing off. I'm Leah and he's Chi. Thanks for
Goodbye,
tuning
guys.
in.
See you next
Bye.
time. Bye.